wins the circle.
Yes, no,
Just kidding. I'm sorry.
that was a tough one. All right. So, guys, I want to introduce our guest real quick. This man, Mr. Klein, Noah,
The man,
the myth, the legend, sophomore savior. He's a junior now, but he's still sophomore savior. Okay.
Amazing.
Barely.
Mr. Don Draper.
Yes. So, Noah, tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into these questions into this election season.
Oh, man. Here we go. Yeah. Sid, thanks for having me. Whole crew, thanks for having me. Honored. Long time, first time. Name is Noah Klein. Come from Stamford, Connecticut, about 30 minutes outside New York City. Studying broadcast journalism. Just started my junior year. About, I guess, a quarter of the way through now, but who's counting? And just having a great time. News producer, news anchor on the side. That's just a hobby. And having a great time. Happy to be here. I'm just excited.
All right. Thank you. Yes.
Wonderful.
So, the election has been called. Well, according to many Republicans, the media has called the election, even though
We've been
the
doing
projection is
48.
Yeah, the projection is, come on now. So, were you guys surprised by the outcome? How do you guys feel about it overall?
Well, I guess I'll go because I just want to say that I don't know if it's true, but I was reading on Twitter. Well, okay, first and foremost, I would like to say that a lot of people are taking the opportunity to like shit on the Associated Press this election cycle, and I would like to just say that the Associated Press is one of the very few news organizations that like loves to put boots on the ground and give journalists jobs. So, I mean, you come after the Associated Press, you come after all of us. And to their credit, the Associated Press did call the election very early, but they were not the first to call Joe Biden, even though Trump wants to shit all over them. Like I said, CNN was the first, and of course, Fox News was the last to call the projections. So please don't come for the Associated Press, y'all. Like, they're just trying to do their job. They're just trying to give little baby journalists like us jobs and let us get experience. And I worked with them during the midterm elections for the Ground Truth Project with ProPublica, and they're so nice. I mean, I haven't worked with Fox News or CNN, so I cannot vouch for them, but they are kind people. They're just trying to do their job, and they're just trying to do it honestly. And like I said a minute ago, they've been calling the election since 1848. So it's not new that the media calls the election. Like, the media is the first place you go to find out anything, like whether it's raining, whether it's traffic outside. So why is an election any different? If anything, it would be more important than traffic or weather. But, you know, that's just what I think.
I'm
It was
surprised.
interesting. My fault, Adam. It was,
Please go ahead. No, you're.
that's why I hate Zoom. But it was interesting. I definitely love uncertainty. I think a lot of it that night specifically depended on where you were watching in terms of the beat you had. I was at the governor's watch party, and there we had Fox News playing. And then when I got back to my hotel, I turned on NBC. And I think just like the difference between the two just like showed how different your view of it was. I think we were sitting in the governor's watch party and the governor won, but that information wasn't clear yet because the Associated Press was the one to call it first. So it was an interesting moment when we were getting texts like, yo, figure your stuff out. And everyone in the room was, you wouldn't have known. So I think it was just interesting, especially that night. I think a lot of how you felt knowing that we weren't going to know the president depended on where you were getting the information. That's something I caught.
Adam?
I'd say I would echo that. I was at the Missourian, just waiting on Amendment 3 results, which I was pretty surprised about. I'd say I'm more surprised about Amendment 3 than the results of the election, but that's another thing.
Can you talk about what Amendment 3 is for people not in Missouri?
Yeah. Amendment 3 is a proposal lawmakers sent to the ballot this year in response to Clean Missouri's redistricting reforms back in 2018 that voters passed via ballot initiative. And what it pretty much does is it allows for new redistricting rules, and the process and the folks behind it to be at arm's length to political persuasion, and less transparency in the process for citizens to contest any plans for new districts that are drawn after the census count comes in.
So gerrymandering.
So it's gerrymandering, yeah. It's it allows for a higher chance of gerrymandering.
Okay.
So.
And it passed, or?
It passed. So it effectively rolled back Clean Missouri's redistricting reforms. What they would have done, what would have happened is an independent, a nonpartisan state demographer would have played a key role in the process. And now it goes back to bipartisan commissions appointed by the governor, and I guess you can decide like which sounds a little more free from that political persuasion. But yeah, so I'm surprised with the election. I'm surprised about. I wasn't surprised about how slow it was to count all the mail-in ballots. I was surprised about how close it ended up being, like with the surge of mail-in ballots being counted by the very end. And I guess they're still counting right now, right?
Yeah, I think they're doing a recount in Pennsylvania for sure. I don't know if they've called Georgia yet or not. I know Georgia was close, but definitely like they flipped that state, which I was surprised. Were there any states that you guys were surprised that like flipped this year for the election?
Oh, for sure. I think that North Carolina was way closer than it's ever been in like years and years and years. And I'm like was born in North Carolina. I'm a military brat, so I hold no allegiance. And I'm in Hawaii right now, and Hawaii was blue. I don't think Hawaii, I honestly don't know, so I'm not going to say, but I don't know if Hawaii's ever been red in its history of being acknowledged in elections. But like North Carolina has never been close. Like it's always been like a deeply red state. And it was like a shock that North Carolina was up for grabs for even a minute. Like, then well, I know Clinton won Georgia in his election, which was in the 90s. I don't remember exact years, but probably 96, I assume. But the fact that Georgia went blue so recently, I don't know if Obama flipped it. I don't have specific state information, but definitely interesting, because I know Georgia is one of those states that has a lot of gerrymandering and voter suppression, and every election year, even during midterm elections, it's always like a big concern in Georgia, just like the amount of like creative ways they come up with to suppress voters. So like kudos to organizers like Stacey Abrams, who really just kind of like, that woman must be sleeping so hard right now. Like she probably, good for her.
There were a lot of issues back in the midterms too, right? With there were like court orders on how they were registering voters or something, right?
Yeah, I think it was an issue with voter ID laws because in some states you don't need a voter ID. You need you can just have like a bill or something that lists your name and residence that proves that you live in that state. But some states need like actual photo ID. And in Georgia, I think there was like deeply contested litigation about whether or not voter ID law was valid or if the language in the law was too vague. So people were contesting that like you don't need like a government issued state ID. Like if I don't know if you guys got those like cards in third grade that would have your picture on it and it would say if this
thumbprint. Yes, I still have mine. Yes.
Like so hypothetically, if I came to the polls, like obviously I wouldn't use that, but if I came to the polls with one of those, people were saying that I should legally be able to vote if I could show that this is my name and here's my picture right next to my name. But people were saying, well, no, the law says that you are not entitled to that. You have to have like a government issued ID. So that was the whole battle about it. I don't remember the outcome of stuff like that, but I really think those nitpicky points are so petty to bring up because I don't know very many like photo ID cards that you would get if you didn't have some other form of proof that you lived in that state. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like a student ID, like obviously you have to live in the state. Like a military ID, you have to live in that state. You have to like live on the base that like gives you that ID. So I just really think that when it comes to these nitpicky things, that's the thing that gets so hard with the media because they try to educate people on these efforts and whatnot, and then people just kind of get lost in the jargon of it all, and then they stop caring because it's just so hard to understand.
Especially because it's like different across the states, you know, like every state has their different laws.
Yeah, definitely.
So this year, I feel like there were definitely a lot of younger people that voted. I know that I for sure like made an effort to vote, get a mail-in ballot, and I think I overnighted it. It was expensive, and I was not happy about the amount of money that I paid, but I got it in, and I felt so happy because, I don't know, they say like, oh, your vote doesn't matter, and in 2016, like, I feel like that outcome kind of allowed people to have that outlook. But I feel like this year, like, it definitely did. Like, what was you guys' process for voting? Did you, like, are you guys residents of where you live? Like, were you able to just go to a place, like, locally and vote, or did you have to mail in a ballot of some sort?
I voted the week before. It was really easy. I just went to the Boone County Clerk's office, or the one downtown, and I asked them for an absentee ballot. They asked me what my excuse was, and I said, I'll be busy, and I voted, and that was it. For everybody else.
Yeah, I voted on election day. Super chill. I woke up and like got ready for coverage and stuff, and I saw the pictures of lines at Mizzou Arena. So I quickly just kind of searched for an email from the Boone County Clerk to see where my polling location was, and I saw it was like the church behind No Gas, if you guys know where that's at.
Yeah.
Church.
You know, because I think it's just all college kids who were slipping in. So it took like a minute, super chill. Definitely the easiest one I've ever had. I think Missouri puts like such a high level of importance on that voter ID card. I don't know if you guys have that, if you're residents. But I was like, I got there and I like gave it to them and they were like, oh, we just need a driver's license. I was like, oh. But that was funny. I mean, it was super chill. It took like 5 minutes.
Good. Yeah, I'm a military brat, so I have to vote absentee because obviously I don't really have like a primary state of residence. So if anything, I usually, the past 2 times, this last election would be the third because midterm elections. The past 2 times I have voted were from Missouri. So basically, I order my ballot, it gets to me in the mail, and fill it out, send it back. Easy peasy. But this time it was kind of way harder because the time, usually, like, they'll tell you the time it will take for you to get your ballot, and usually it's like within a week. This time it didn't get to me for a month, and I was really nervous because I got my ballot probably like before Halloween, and I was like, this is cutting it close. But thank goodness I got it filled out, and I got my receipt that it was counted like the day after. Well, I got it the day after the election, which was Wednesday, right? It was on a Tuesday, right? The days all blended together for me. But it just, yeah, it's really scary for people like out here who are voting absentee, and any other like military personnel, or even people that live in like the outer territories of the US, especially Puerto Ricans who voted, because like all the interference that's going on with mail-in voting, like that's our primary way of voting, and it just was kind of terrifying because like that method of voting was being attacked so heavily this election cycle. And it kind of sucks because like it's really hard to, well, when it comes to like absentee ballot voting in North Carolina, you have to like send a photocopy of your birth certificate and your ID along with your ballot so they can like really verify your vote. And just for people to be like, oh, like it's whatever, like you can fake it so easy. I was just like, really? Like, where are you guys voting? Because it just was really nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah, just the overnight thing, that it was $40 for me to send it back. I was like, I could have bought so much food. I could have done so much with that $40, but it was worth it in the end. And I think also just seeing how excited people were that Biden got elected, like what were the celebrations like by you guys? If there were any.
My roommate was pretty happy, and I think his happiness was pretty contagious. So I think the night, Saturday night, when it was like settled and they came on stage and started talking, I think you could just feel the air was a little different. You could feel like y'all know what I felt. Y'all felt the same thing, I think.
I definitely did. In DC, it was like I was driving to work and people were like hanging over like the side of bridges and stuff like that, and like wine glasses, like, oh my God, he won, like just so excited. And then it was just a lot going on. I think near the church where Trump held that Bible back like during the peak of the protests over the summer.
Upside down Bible?
Yes. People gathered outside of that church because that's the church that he goes to, I think, like on special occasions or something like that. So people were gathered outside of there. People outside of the White House with Arrest Trump banners. I was like, wow, y'all are dedicated. I respect it. I really do. Because people were there all day, like outside all day. Yeah. Like it was definitely like.
They're ripping the grass.
You said what?
They're ripping the grass up because of their parties they've been having on the lawn. Go ahead.
You broke up really bad. I'm sorry, but it was. People were happy. People were very happy. I feel like this is probably the best day in like quarantine in a while.
Yeah.
I really hope that this kind of turns things around as far as like mask mandates. People think that the pandemic is over now that Biden is in office, which is not true. Like he has the power to cut it short to a certain degree, but people still need to stay inside and wear masks and social distance. So, yes.
Yeah, there was a lot of which I was surprised, but so I am my only hobby right now, because I am quarantining really hard because of my family, and one of my family members is like very heavily immunosuppressed. So my only hobby I go to right now is going to Planet Fitness because their cleaning method is really nice, and sitting at home is not doing me or my mental health any good. So I have one thing that I do. But as I was driving to Planet Fitness, I saw a lot of Stop the Steal rallies by Trump supporters, and it's surprising to see it out here.
Oh yeah, in Hawaii.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of people assume like a whole nother podcast episode could be done about the issues with like racial injustice in Hawaii, because people are like convinced that because it's Hawaii, like we don't have any problems, like every day is a vacation, but that's not true. And the Stop the Steal rally actually blocked traffic at one point, and like the police had to come and like escort them out of the road. And I know that a lot of people were like gearing up for like the end of the world when Biden won, but it just kind of I don't know. It was kind of hard for me to like process like the logic behind it, and also like this idea that like stopping traffic is going to do something for the election. And I remember like when Black Lives Matters protests were happening, a lot of Republicans and Trump supporters specifically were talking about how like disruptions to modern day life weren't going to help anything, especially during a pandemic. So it's just a little interesting to see these people that were kind of swearing by these like notions that protesting doesn't really help, like out in the street protesting. It was kind of poetic.
I saw one tweet that was like Trump supporters were like peaceful, like protesting peacefully by kneeling, and it's like, so now that's seen as peaceful protesting, like
hijacking. That's funny. I was covering the Stop the Steal rally. I was sending Noah some juice if KOMU needed it, but yeah, I that was an interesting day too, Saturday. What was that like for you, Noah, trying to coordinate and figure out what was happening and getting that produced and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because I think we had a discussion about the legitimacy of it and the ethics behind it, because to one point, like there's a lot of people there, and at least from the videos I was seeing, it looked like at least 100 people. And just keeping my crews safe on the ground. I knew we had the Missouri in there, and we made sure we were in numbers. I think it was just making sure we were telling the story properly was the biggest thing for a 30-minute newscast. I think it gets difficult to do that, especially when we were dealing with Biden speaking at 7, finished around 8. Mm-hmm. I think just keeping the reporters calm and making sure they were briefed on all the safety measures, which I think we've all kind of been in those situations before. I know Sid definitely. We've seen like situations where anything can happen.
I remember that.
And I think just preparing them for that was really important. They were younger reporters. One of them was just shadowing, which hell of a shadow. And the other one she's a really sweet girl. She's a sophomore, and she's almost like a little sister to me. So making sure she was safe out there was a big priority, but I knew she had Adam with her, so that made it a lot better.
That's great.
Okay. So what has it been like? So this election season, though, you've been reporting, producing, and anchoring. What has that been like overall?
It's been interesting. I was working a bunch during when we had produced that out. So that was a really cool opportunity to see all 4 candidates for governor of Missouri kind of go head-to-head. It was something I had never really taken part of. But it was a cool experience to kind of see how that comes together. Besides that, the election season's been pretty crazy. I think Missouri is a super interesting state when it comes to voting and things like that, and the 2 parties. I think especially if you've lived in Columbia, you kind of feel isolated to a point of where you're like, oh, we're totally a blue state. And then you go 15 minutes outside of the city and it's like, oh, there's a lot of stuff. But I think being introduced to all that was fascinating, because I'm from Connecticut, which has always been blue and probably will be blue for the next however many years. So that was really interesting. And covering the governor's race at a Bass Pro Shop in Springfield, Missouri is an experience in itself. So I think just kind of taking everything in, still sticking to telling the story correctly, was my number one thing, and just making sure that people were informed. So if something was factually incorrect, making sure, whether it's as an anchor or as a producer, that I'm editing the script to make it factually correct. There were a couple of times where we would do the math, or on some of speeches, we would just fact check it on the air. So I think it was just the most important thing was keeping everyone educated, because people truly were going to us for actual legitimate information they're going to vote off of. So it was a really great learning opportunity, and happy I had the chance to do it.
So here's a hard question. I know that from my very brief time working at KLMU, a lot of viewers would call into the station. How did you kind of deal with callers that might have, assuming this actually happened, how would you deal with callers that would call in to kind of question the legitimacy of the election count? Did you have anybody that even called in to kind of be like, well, this and this about the election,
Yeah, I mean, our content manager, you guys know, Steve Lamson, got a ton of calls about Hunter Biden and that whole deal. That was a big thing. Shockingly, we didn't get any phone calls when college football went off the air on NBC for Joe Biden to speak. And also shocking, we really didn't get any phone calls after 10 p.m. newscasts that night. We did get 2 emails, subject line fake news, from 2 different people. So that was interesting. And they just straight up listed everything they disagreed with in the newscast. And it was, the classic one-liners. But I think it's just a lot of it, and Randy Reeves taught me this one time, when it's answering the phone, unfortunately, it's just, all right, thank you, or it's correcting them. Typically in my time, I don't have time to sit on the phone with someone for 15 minutes and talk about the legitimacy of something that is legitimate. So usually it's just, okay, thank you for the call. Appreciate it. That's been it. A lot of the phone calls were correcting nightly news, which I have to kind of explain why I can't call Lester Holt and correct him.
Yeah.
That was it. It's a good question. It's surprisingly, I wasn't there for the phone calls, or they've chosen to switch to email.
What's the fact checking like?
So on-air fact checking, I think, is just making sure that we're not providing fake information. So a lot of it just goes through your basic broadcast class of if someone gives you a soundbite that is not correct, you're probably better off not airing the soundbite than correcting it. Because especially in broadcast, right, when people are holding the clicker, I call it a clicker, some people go remote, they're holding the clicker as almost a weapon in their hand. If someone hears a soundbite that's wrong, they might click off before you have the time to correct them. So a lot of my work as a producer is just making sure everything we're putting in the newscast is honest and ethical before we even have to correct them.
So here's another hard question then. How did you, as a station, and maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, but how did you, as a station, address Trump's speeches about the election, legitimacy of the election? Because, it's just, and Missouri's a red state. I don't know if Governor Parson has done what Mitch McConnell has done, where he's also been well, can we really say this election is legitimate? But yeah, Noah, if that question made sense.
I mean, luckily enough, and not really luckily, I just kind of how it's worked is the networks have taken care of it. Because if NBC is in a special report and they feel the need to dump out, which they did recently, they've been taking care of that. Even Fox News, I think today during a press conference, dumped on out, and their anchor was we just can't even do this. So I think to your question, a lot of the times it's been during a special report, and Lester or Savannah will dump out and explain why that's not true. In terms of the governor and any other elected officials for the state, I think it's just calling them out when we feel the need that they have said something incorrect. Obviously, everyone has probably seen the moment with Caroline Dade recently this year. So just a similar idea, and on a smaller level as to like your question for national, usually NBC is taking care of that. But on a local level, it's just stuff like that of holding people accountable.
For anyone who doesn't know, what is dump out?
Dump out would be someone is in the control room screaming, dump out, dump out, dump out. And basically you're going back to the studio or the reporter, or in this case, the anchor usually, and you're just getting on it. So I think you would dump out in this situation to correct someone, but we could also dump out of something if there's a technical error.
Is there a lag?
If there could be a lag. So like my 5 p.m. live shot when I was at Governor Parsons' campaign, it froze because the cell service was so terrible. So it froze. So the producer got in my ear and was like, pitch it back. So then you just try to get back as quick as I can. But similarly, like if the batteries were to fail on the camera or something and it goes to black, you just dump out of it.
So I've been keeping track of all the coverage's lower thirds, and
CNN's lower thirds.
CNN's lower thirds were so funny.
They were.
Which my point is, I wanted to say that like I want to talk to Noah and Adam too, from like both a broadcast and a print perspective. Like, what's the danger of like getting lazy with your lower third / headline? But just for the sake of like giving us a little bit of fun, CNN's lower thirds were so funny. At one point, their lower third said, "Trump complains about ballots being counted," and I said, "Oh my God." And then Fox News actually had a lower third at one point that said, "Trump attempts to discredit election," or no,
without
Trump
evidence or something like that. Yeah.
Trump attempts to rig election with false evidence, and I was like, Fox News? But anyways, my point is that as fun as those lower thirds might be, those lower thirds are obviously super dangerous. And like, as much as we want to like cave in and like complain, be a lower third, like it's hard, you know? And how do you guys kind of combat that need to just be like, this guy's stupid? We all know he's stupid, but as a journalist.
I think it's just remembering that there's a lot of people that could just be watching without the sound on. And I guess from a print perspective, that would be the equivalent of not reading past the headline.
Yeah.
And I think it's just being like, okay, what is memorable that sums up what's happening right now? The other issue, and it's probably a headline issue too, is you only have so many characters. So I think sometimes I try to at least just give people something that they're going to remember that fits the character limit and also actually like makes sense. But I do applaud people for just kind of throwing things out there that they felt best summed it up. It is difficult because it's probably really quick too, but that's just my perspective on it. I think it's trying to give people something that they remember, but also makes sense and is ethical.
I think print just has more time to, we're not, unless we're like live tweeting, which if we're live tweeting, I think we have more leeway than broadcasters on like what we can say, to be honest. So I don't know. I didn't watch it in real time, like his premature victory speech, but I remember it being framed as like, this isn't normal. Like this isn't supposed to happen. A lot of things weren't supposed to happen, but this isn't like anyone carrying this without any real-time fact checking or anything like that. That's a failure in journalism. So I think what was the issue? Was it the lower thirds was kind of vague at first, and then people were like, you need to be more clear about what he's saying right now, like what he's actually saying right now.
Well,
Doing.
I think probably I talked with journalists was that like it's kind of hard to balance the idea that we're going to treat every perspective fairly, and like how do you balance like how do you balance giving a president airtime when he's just spewing bullshit, you know? Like, because he is a president, and like as both a journalist and like a citizen of this country, I want to know what he's gonna be saying. But if he's saying something that's just like very manipulative and maybe a little vindictive at the fact that he has lost the election, like how do you kind of this is probably not a great question, but mostly I'm just confused because well no, I'm just saying that like it's kind of hard because like on one hand you could dump out like ABC did and NBC and be like, look, this is not a legitimate thing to say, and it's just at this point kind of frivolous to keep it on air. Or you could take the approach that CNN and Fox News did, where they ran the whole speech and they just ran very like indicting lower thirds. So I guess my question was like, which approach is better, and like what kind of justifies either perspective? Because I feel like one is definitely better than the other, but it just kind of fascinated me that all the news stations took such different approaches. Because I feel like in my heart of hearts that like what CNN and Fox News did was frivolous, because I think that personally not every perspective is equal, and especially if you're just straight up lying. But I just think it's interesting that like some news stations will be like, no, people do need to hear this. And lower thirds like that can either clarify or it can kind of feed into what he's saying. Because if you're like a Trump supporter and you see that headline that says Trump complains, blah, 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 you'd be like, oh, well, obviously they're going to indict him because they don't support him. And at that point, I'm just kind of confused about like what approach should we take then if every approach has an issue with it, you know? I don't know if this is making sense.
Yeah. I think it goes back to like the legitimacy issue and what is legitimate and what isn't. I think it's also like just so it's new territory, because it's always been long-standing tradition that you're never going to dump out of the president of the United States and that you're never going to correct him. So I think, and it's such a big network discussion, like as a local journalist, it's difficult for me to kind of think about that decision-making process, because I think there's so much more money behind it than I could probably comprehend. But I think this is kind of the last straw, and it's the first time that we're really seeing almost everyone be like, okay, well, no, we're actually going to step in here. This is not true. Mm-hmm. As opposed to afterward giving the president the chance to say it and then going.
Yeah, shoot. That just in itself kind of sums up like the whole issue, is that like
fast for you
never dumped out on a president before. So
yeah, I'd say dump out, you know. I have like, you know, we have the privilege of writing things up after the fact. So if I were in Noah's position or anyone else's position where you had to make that real-time decision, I would dump out. I mean, if he makes his point in the beginning and you know what he's about, because he made his point and then he just started like rambling on about these unfounded conspiracy theories about
lost ballots and dumped ballots and all that.
Just regurgitated things that he knows like his voters or his supporters like soak up. So I'd say, yeah, definitely like dumping out. Don't give him the platform to do that. Like we tell it how it is. Like that's our job isn't to prop him up. Our job's to, you know, empower viewers and help them make better judgments about, give
I
them
also
what they,
think. Oh,
what
sorry.
they need. No, you're good. Just give them what they need to make good judgments.
Mhm. I also think, like you mentioned, his supporters. Something that's so dangerous about like some of them that I've seen like do like on air interviews or something like that is they've literally been like, oh, like no matter what he says, like I trust him, I believe him, and that's so scary that there are like people out there that will feed into that. Like he knows that too. Like he's been doing it for the past 4 years. I think that's also something that's important to point out. Like,
yeah, it's like a nation within a nation.
Yeah, and I think his like whole tactic is just to like condition his supporters to just like reject objective facts and be like, well, that's up for question, so then it becomes like every fact is like up for debate, when like some are very much not for debate. And then like his influence can like leak into like I feel like at first the way he kind of did things was when it came to criticisms about himself, like he was able to be like, oh, well, we don't know that for sure, and like of course they're gonna say that because they're all against me. And it's easy for you to be like that because you're like, well, it's him, like he would know about himself better than anybody. And then it started bleeding into like other things around him, and like when he was firing everybody, he was like, oh, well, from my experience with them, I saw X, Y, and Z, and so that's why I should fire them. And then when the pandemic came, it began to leak into like the validity of science, which has made this so hard because he can be like, well, from my experience with COVID, because he did get COVID, and he was like, well, my experience with COVID, like I'm immune now, this, and this. And it's just weird because he's like given himself that superpower to be like, I am better than truth, And I think that just is kind of so scary because now when it comes to this election, he's like, well, I've seen with my own eyes, or I've heard from people I trust, or I've heard from my supporters who are the most honest people in the world, that there's fraud happening with this election. So now he's just able to take this whole democratic institution that's been around for hundreds of years and just be like, nope, fake. Like that's so scary.
Yeah, no, speaking about the like legitimacy of science, I remember there was like, we have Fauci, who's, amazing, great guy, telling him one thing, and he's like, yeah, I guess so. And there was one doctor, and I don't even think that she's like super well known, but she was talking about how like masks don't work and basically just validating everything Trump said. And then he just went and like propped her up. And it's like there's hundreds of thousands of doctors saying like, no, she's wrong. And he's like, no, I believe her though, because she agrees with me. Like,
and like she got a degree from wherever, so like obviously she's a doctor, but like we don't even consider the fact that like doctors can be disbarred like for things like this. Like a doctorate is not a guarantee that you're like a fact maker, Like it makes me think of the guy who kind of started the vaccines cause autism hysteria. He actually like, this made me mad when I found this out, so prepare to get mad, because he did his whole study. He used a population of 12 kids. Right? And what's funny is that his whole study was on the MMR vaccine, and his solution to this whole idea that the MMR vaccine causes autism was to sell the vaccines as individual vaccines, and he was selling individual vaccines. So he was just trying to make money, but people took that as a scientific fact. It just kind of drummed it up. And so when it comes to these people who are like, well, I'm on the edge of science, like I know things that people don't know, people can use that as like a way to be like, well, I'm giving you truth. But no, like even in science, like the outliers are just like,
not him selling individual baggies of vaccine.
Oh, I could do a whole nother podcast episode about this whole thing. I am so mad. I watched a documentary about it. I will scream about it another time, because if I don't stop now, I'm not gonna stop.
Oh my god. Whew,
What a crazy year, huh?
Mm-hmm.
How do y'all? How is everyone's fatigue? Reporting fatigue.
Oh,
Luckily, I haven't had to report. That hasn't trickled into my job. I don't know if it ever will.
Good.
But just like, I don't know, just
Overall, how does everyone feel? How's everyone dealing with the fatigue?
well, I didn't really do a lot of reporting in the past few months, but I have been a lot I've been doing a lot of blog. I guess you could call it blogging on social media, but because in Hawaii we have Twitter feeds where they're like, you ever been added to like a Twitter list? Well, so what we do is we create Twitter lists and we add journalists onto them, and so that way, like, when it comes to like election season or like important newsworthy events, people can get information from people who aren't affiliated with news stations if they want like a more independent view. So I've been participating in that a lot, and Hawaii just had a mayor race, as a lot of other states have been, and we actually hired a former news executive, which is really weird to see because he's a kind of an interesting dude. But I guess my fatigue lies more with Twitter, which I feel like everybody has, so my fatigue is not special.
What about you, Sid? How have you been taking time for yourself in Chicago?
Oh, I'm not in Chicago. I'm in DC.
Oh, you're in DC?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on.
Yes, I'm doing a fellowship at CNN. So yeah, basically with that, just there have been some days where it's just like nonstop 8 hours. Like the reporters need anything, if they need me to like log something for them, if they need me to look something up for them, or if the producer needs me to look something up for him, it's just like back to back. But then some days it's kind of like, oh, like we got everything covered. So I'd say on busy days, just coming home and sleeping, and just like, I do not watch the news. I really get on social media on my days off. Like, I think I watched Girlfriends all day on Netflix today. Like, did not even try to watch local news, national news, anything like that. So, yes.
How about you, Noah?
Respect to you, Sid. I can't take the day off. Like, I should, and it's something
No,
I'm
you
gonna have
definitely
to
should.
do.
I know you're trying to get a job, but you got some time, buddy. Like,
Every day off, like, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, especially with Slack and all these notifications.
I feel
It's
it.
hard. I think the biggest thing for me has just been, I took like a nap, literally like slept. And I can't remember the last time I did that. Like, just slept from like 5 to like 7, the sweet spot right there. And it was just like, damn, I haven't done that in a while. And it's one of those when you wake up and you like can't tell if it's like 11 or like 5:30.
If it's like 2 days later.
Yeah, and you're just like, all right, let's eat dinner or something now. Yeah, that's it. I think I'm getting back to it. I just got back from a lake house, so I had a day away. I'm back now, feeling ready.
All right. Trying to think what else. So, no, I mentioned when I asked you, I wanted to kind of talk about like the creative process of producing, because, when I was, taking the class, I didn't realize how much creativity went into it until, second semester, when I was kind of forced to, bump a story because the reporter didn't have their stuff in. But on a good day, let's say on a good day, like, what is your creative process for like creating the rundown of the show, extra elements, all that?
Yeah, literally, and someone I learned from taught me this. Literally, I think I'm just thinking like in my head and trying to envision how I see the show starting. And when I'm teaching students and doing a lot of that stuff, it's trying to take advantage of the best element of the stories I have. So I always tell people, like, if it's a super emotional story, there's probably sound bites that we can use from it. And I'm always thinking about every story in the rundown and what's the best part of it. And sometimes that means putting all the stories together and doing a little tease for all the stories you're going to have. Sometimes it's just a few. It's really just sometimes I'll walk around the station. Sometimes it's just getting up and walking around and just almost picturing what's happening and like how I best see the show going on successfully. So a lot of it is just taking advantage of the best portions of stories we have for the day. So usually that comes from really good video, really good sound, or if it's a question that I have, addressing that question in the first 5 seconds in the newscast. So like, for example, say I'm trying to figure out if it's going to rain tomorrow. Right. So say it's like the day before a big, I don't know, big I think they're Memorial Day usually. We're thinking like people are barbecuing, people are hanging on the beach. So I'm usually thinking, oh, is it going to rain? What's the weather going to be like for that day? So I know I'm leading my show with weather. And I know the question I'm asking my meteorologist is, what's it looking like? Am I going to be able to cook cheeseburgers for the kids tomorrow? And then I'm already thinking what the viewers are thinking because I'm trying to get into their heads, if that explained any of it.
Okay. So say it's like, I don't want to say a bad day, but like not a day where, you know, things aren't as together as they would be on a good day. Would you automatically kind of go into problem solving mode, or would you kind of still stay in that creative mindset and trying to make the best out of it either way?
It's a balancing act because you want it to be the most creative, but you also want it to be the most clean. So I think especially at KOMU, we're in such a special spot where sometimes you spend an entire shift being creative, and then sometimes I'm spending my entire shift like going through the basics with people. I had a great opportunity with a girl last week for her first time at breaking news, and I had the chance to just like slow her down and be like, no. What do you know? What don't you know? And what's the latest information? And as a junior, and she was a senior, and it was just interesting seeing that play out, but then seeing her go on TV and execute it perfectly when like I get to have a pep talk with her 5 minutes before she does it is just like a super fulfilling thing. And I think it's just having the balancing act between troubleshooting and if things aren't going well, it's always being one step ahead. And being like, okay, if this doesn't work, I'm going to do this. If that doesn't work, I'll do this. And if that all doesn't work, then we'll figure this out.
Nice.
Love to see it.
So out of the three, which one do you like better between anchoring, reporting, producing?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot there. I'm still figuring that out. For right now, I feel most comfortable and most confident producing. I probably have the most fun doing it, for at least right now. I do love anchoring, though, so we'll see.
And you're a senior right now, Noah?
I'm a junior.
Junior, gotcha.
Slowly moving.
He taught me how to produce. I was a senior. He was a sophomore. So this man.
We had some fun, Sid. We had great days.
I worked the desk for like a week. And then he was in there every day just behind a computer, just figuring something out.
I've got too many stories about Sid. I won't expose her.
Go ahead. Go ahead, share. What's your favorite memory like teaching me how to produce?
Well, you falling asleep in the booth was pretty good.
No, because I was so excited because Rod, the old EP, he would not let anybody in the booth. And I was like, man, I don't want to sit out here like the whole time and just like write the whole time. Especially like I want to be in there with him because I'm in the booth every other day. And so Noah told me he was EP, and I was like, so I can come in the booth, right? He still was like, yeah. But also, this is an overnight shift. So at this point, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. I had been there since like 11 writing. So I'm exhausted, passed out. I was excited, though. I was so happy to be in the booth. Like, above everything else, like, I was happy about that.
We had some good time. I think we had a really good example of like a team coming together. Because we had me, we had you, and we had Tatiana. And I think we all had like very different strengths.
Oh, no, definitely, yeah.
But it was a cool example of just seeing everyone come together because I think especially, at least I didn't know either of you guys when the semester.
I remember you from the summer because I remember you produced were you the producer when I did the guy ran behind my shot?
I was not. I was there and I saw a lot of things in the newsroom and I thought I was like, that's it. It was nice knowing Sydney, but I mean, I guess I'm never gonna see her again.
You were a professional. That was awesome. She was like,
My favorite
wave.
Sydney moment ever. She's just like, let me mind my business.
KOMU 8 News starts with breaking news.
Breaking news, a death investigation is underway on the north side of Columbia. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily Spain.
And I'm Jordan Berger. Thanks so much for joining us. KOMU 8's Noelle Walton joins us live with what we know so far. Noelle?
I'm here in the 1900 block of Providence Road near McKnight Tire Store. Police and detectives have been here since around noon. Police have confirmed they are conducting a death investigation, but they haven't said much more than that. There are at least 2 police cars here along with the crime scene investigation van. Several police officers are still patrolling the area that's been roped off with crime scene tape. McKnight Tire Store is open for business, and so are the other businesses in the strip mall. We'll be here looking for more answers, and we'll bring you a live report at 6. Live in the north end of Columbia, Noah Walton, KOMU 8 News.
That story back for anyone who doesn't know what.
Okay, so yeah, basically,
I'm playing the video. I'm putting it in editing. I'm putting the video in.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, but let me preface this with I was not a fan of reporting because the first week I got there, I missed the first week because I was doing study abroad, so I had 4 shifts back to back. So I was automatically like, give me the producing. So this is my last shift of the summer, my last one. And I had just come back from doing a whole different story. And they were like, Sydney going breaking news. I was like, I mean, okay, if you want me to, like, cool. And so I did. I went out there. I had the camera set up. And then I remember because I had a really bad habit of, like, stuttering during my live shots. So I was like, okay, this one, no matter what, I'm going to just keep going and power through it. So the guy ran behind me in the shot, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep going because this is my moment right here. I was like, I took a few minutes to like memorize what they had sent me to read, and I was like, I'm gonna keep going because I know what I'm talking about right now. So that's what I did, and they were like, you should have acknowledged him. I said, he's gone now, so I'm sorry.
Too late.
But yeah, no, they're like, oh yeah, stay out there for the 6 o'clock show. I was like, you're gonna send somebody out here with me, right? And no one came. But so it was.
So typically, you would want to acknowledge what had happened.
Definitely yes.
It was like a.
It was like a death investigation. Yeah, it was a death investigation.
Oh wow!
They found like an infant's body.
They ended up finding an infant's body. At that point, we had only known it was a death investigation.
Yeah.
But to be fair to say, there was no, like, hindsight 2020. It's like, yes, you should acknowledge it. But I always think about that. I'm like, I don't know, what would you say?
It was just some dude. Like, there was no siren. There was nothing.
Being from the police, yeah.
Yeah, and then the police started chasing him. I was like, and I was out there by myself. Like, I did not have a live op or anything. Like,
KOMU did you dirty.
They
all respect to KOMU, but they were like, yeah, sure. Said they're out there. And then they used that footage. They didn't even did you talk about it in the broadcast that night?
I think they acknowledged it. They slowed the clip down too. I was like, that's so disrespectful.
We were like, oh, we need to go back to it. We need to go back to it and explain what happened. And I was like, well, how are we going to edit it? And they're like, yeah, slow-mo.
Listen, I was in the Convergence lab when that happened to you.
Really? I'm so dead. You know, my friend was getting her nails done, and she texted me, and I was like, yeah, no, someone did run behind me. Like, I was there.
She said, did you see that?
That's funny.
I'm glad that was my last shift. I will say that.
What a memorable shift.
What a way to close it out.
Yeah.
You know, I did not go out. Well, besides that, I like photogged. But I remember there was, low key, like whenever I had a camera or anything to like report KOMU, y'all did me dirty because there was one night I went to like 5 fires. Like I was coming and going like from the station, like, oh yeah, go shoot some B-roll of this. not coming back to bed. Go down the highway real quick. So yeah, that was my experience. Channel 8.
We love KOMU.
Yes. Shout out KOMU. I hope you guys watch this. I love y'all. Y'all taught me a lot. I miss you guys.
We miss you. We miss both you guys. All three. Apparently, Adam's a veteran too.
Yeah.
Apparently, Adam was a DA.
Oh yeah. I am a veteran.
KOMU does not miss me. Don't lie to me like that. If anything, the Missourian misses me more because I did everything.
What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah. See, she knows. But yeah, I think that might be it.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions. I don't know if y'all have it. Yay, claps.
Clapping.
Noah, do you have any? Oh, Noah, if anyone wants to start producing, like, do you have any advice of, like, how to get into that?
Any advice? I mean, take the producing class. Email anyone at KOMU, any of the faculty. Email me for questions, and just come at it with an open mind and ready to grind. And don't fall asleep in the booth like Sid Walton, and you'll be all right. Actually, maybe it's a good lesson. If you do fall asleep in the booth, you'll turn out like Sid Walton and be, incredibly successful. So maybe do fall asleep in the booth. No.
Hey, look at the draw.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's lay out some socials.
Oh, yes.
Wrap it up.
You can go ahead first, Noah. Just say, like, your Twitter, Instagram, all that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, wait, what do I do first?
You can say where you want you to go. So if your Instagram isn't public, then just maybe mention your journalism Twitter, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
Facebook, Twitch stream,
Sounds good.
Plug it all.
Okay, so just say my Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right now.
Yes.
All right. My Twitter is KOMU Klein, spelled Klein like Calvin.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Nice.
That's a good way to put it.
Smooth like butter. Yeah.
No, people really hate when I say that, so I might get a lot of hate on that.
No.
I do it all for the fans.
Klein like
You're
Calvin.
just the greats here.
Oh, that's a bar, though. Klein
like Sean Connery, man. All right.
R.I.P. Sean Connery.
Yeah. Mine's at Adam _S Jackson.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
My handle is still Rachel.Zalucki. That's Z as in zebra, ALUCKI, because I'm still looking for a job. So, anybody that's like real desperate for somebody who has weird skills and a lot of reporting experience, just send them my way. I am just so desperate. So desperate. I'm just kidding. Not that desperate. But like a little bit desperate.
And for me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Noelle Walton _. It's my stage name. Yes.
We love a pen name. And the show is...
Oh, the show, of course, yes. At the _barbecue on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram loves us a little bit more than Twitter. Mm-hmm. I made some posts yesterday, and I was the only person that liked and retweeted it. So I was like, that's cool. It's fine, guys. But nah. Yeah. All right. Anyone else have anything else they want to slide in real quick?
Nope, but we'll I don't know about our guests. We good? But we'll see you next week. Listen to the new Music Monday.
Yes,
podcast.
I just dropped a little visual for it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's retro. It's vintage. It's hipster.
All that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. See you next week.
Bye.